for doing something that is actually pretty exemplary when it comes right down to it. So the White House is not going to be pardoning Edward Snowden. Oh well. Unsurprisingly, according to the Ars Technica, the White House formally announced on Tuesday that it will not be granting a pardon to Edward Snowden anytime soon. Immediately after Snowden was formally charged in 2013 with espionage, theft, and conversion of government property, supporters began petitioning the White House to pardon the famed former National Security Agency contractor. Now, that's all well and good. And after all, he did technically sort of kind of break the law. But still, yeah, a pardon, I think, would be in order. However, that's rather unlikely because the president is a rather big advocate, actually, for the National Security Agency and all of the different surveillance apparatuses that are involved, or apparati that are involved, I should say. Little known fact, actually, apparati is the plural of apparatus. So all the different apparati that are involved in Edward Snowden's revelations of the apparati that are in the National Security Agency to spy on us. In a brief statement, Lisa Monaco, the president's advisor on Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, wrote, "Instead of constructively addressing these civil liberties issues, Mr. Snowden's dangerous decision to steal and disclose classified information had severe consequences for the security of our country and the people who work day in and day out to protect it. If he felt that his actions were consistent with civil disobedience, then he should do what those who have taken issue with their own government do: challenge it, speak out, engage in a constructive act of protest, and importantly, accept the consequences of his actions. He should come home to the United States and be judged by a jury of his peers, not hide behind the cover of authoritarian regime. Right now, he's running away from the consequences of his actions. But I thought he already has run away from an authoritarian regime. It's called the United States. So what is the problem here? Well, people are upset at Edward Snowden because he's Edward Snowden for one, but also think about what he did. He exposed, not single-handedly, of course, but he helped to expose anyway, a massive system of abuse that takes place in the National Security Agency. Now, those who are in power in the National Security Agency, the director, the president, everybody, would prefer it if you didn't know that all that went on. That being the case, it's rather a threat to what they deem to be national security for us to know about these things. Now, whether or not they actually think that it's a threat to national security is a whole nother matter. But as it is now, it's rather obvious that they're trying to hunt the guy down. You know, they're trying to get him back in the country so that he can face charges for doing the right thing. Think about it this way. I probably would not be brave enough to do what Edward Snowden did were I in his situation. And also think about how the information that he put out, really, it kind of is extremely useful to those of us who are privacy minded, because now we know, at least to a certain degree, what all is out there in terms of what's trying to get us. And before the Edward Snowden revelations, everything that we knew about the National Security Agency was really just conjecture up until just now. It was basically all just conjecture. You know, you'd look at different conspiracy websites and see that, oh, you know, there's people who are spying on you, and there are people who are looking at all your tweets, and there are people who are looking at all your phone conversations and all your texts and all that sort of thing. And you'd read that on those different websites, but I mean, that was it. You know, it didn't really go any farther than that when it came to evidence. You know, there was no evidence that existed really that any of this went on until we had the Edward Snowden stuff. And now we know that in actuality, there's quite a bit going on in the National Security Agency. So thanks to Edward Snowden, we now know. But think about it this way too. Had he not released what he released, we would never know. So we would go on with our merry lives, not knowing anything about what goes on in the National Security Agency, and nobody would be held accountable. One of Snowden's attorneys, Ben Wisner of the American Civil Liberties Union, told Ars Technica that he can't comment without conferring with the client, which may happen later. Wisner has previously argued that returning to the United States is all but impossible because the Espionage Act of 1917, under which Snowden was prosecuted, will not allow him to make a normal legal defense. So he's probably not going to be facing a jury of his peers, and he's probably not going to be able to make any sort of actual real defense when it comes to his the charges that are against him. You have a right to a jury of your peers, but unfortunately, there's the Espionage Act of 17, which means you can't really defend yourself in any sort of meaningful way. It's weird to think too, because this is a bill that's almost 100 years old, the Espionage Act of 1917. Espionage is a little bit different now than it was back in 1917. Things have changed quite a bit since 1917, believe it or not. Perhaps the Espionage Act should be revisited, or maybe not, according to the lawmakers. They would rather that not happen. The laws under which Snowden is charged don't distinguish between sharing information with the press in public interest and selling secrets to a foreign enemy. Pretty big difference there. Weisner told The Guardian in 2014, the laws would not provide him any opportunity to say that the public say the information never should have been withheld from the public in the first place. And the fact that the disclosures have led to the highest journalism rewards, have led to historic reforms in the US and around the world, all of that would be irrelevant in a prosecution under the espionage laws here in the United States. Another one of Snowden's US-based lawyers, Jesselyn Radek, reiterated to Ars Technica that her client is not running away. Snowden is in Russia because of the United States, which revoked his passport while he was transiting through there to Latin America, she said. So how does the president think that Snowden should have constructively addressed these issues when his administration has led the worst crackdown on national security and intelligence whistleblowers in U.S. history? Earlier, the president stated that he has passed an executive order that Snowden could have used in order to go to proper channels. That statement was actually false. That's Presidential Policy Directive number 19 that was not implemented when Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA, and it does not protect contractors like Snowden. So no matter what they try to say to defend themselves over in the government, it doesn't really matter because they're still incorrect. They can say all they want, but when it comes right down to it, we know what we know now, and there's no going back on it. And that's my favorite part of it, is that even though Edward Snowden may never see the United States again, or at least he may never walk on any U.S. street ever again, he still has created an impact without ever actually setting foot in the United States after the fact. All he did was put information online and then escape, and that was it. That's the extent of it on his part. Of course, he did a lot more in terms of gathering the information and everything, but the act that was so controversial was just publishing something online and then leaving the country. Now, those two things in and of themselves are not really that interesting, right? I mean, I could post something online and leave the country too. I have done, but it's what he did, what he posted, that makes it so fascinating, because there's so much information now that we have that is mind-boggling. I mean, we're still sifting through a lot of the information that came out of the Edward Snowden leaks. We're still trying to process all that information, and it keeps going deeper and deeper too. The information keeps getting more and more interesting as time goes by. But unfortunately, there's probably not going to be a presidential pardon for Edward Snowden from any president either. Be they GOP or be they Democratic, it doesn't really matter. There's probably not going to be a pardon for Edward Snowden. That's something else that needs to be kept in mind too, is that people will, for some reason, think that a GOP candidate may have gone easier on Snowden. That's probably not true, actually, because the GOP tends to be even more interested in surveillance and even more interested in the NSA than any other party that's out there presently, aside from perhaps the Fascist Party or the Authoritarian Party, if that exists, or the National Socialist Party of the USA. The GOP seems to be quite interested in surveillance in ways that are rather unprecedented in a lot of ways. The GOP seems to be very much interested in surveillance, to the point where people will actually defend the NSA from within the GOP, which really doesn't make any sense when you think about it. I mean, how could you possibly defend the NSA and then try to look good? Like, you're running for president. So what should I do? What would be very popular? Well, I'll defend the NSA. Like, are you crazy? Surely you're insane to defend the NSA at any point. One of the most unpopular agencies ever at this point in time. Seems kind of, or point in time, I should say. Seems kind of, well, it seems kind of stupid, actually. But then that kind of defines the GOP anyway, kind of stupid. And it's not just the GOP, it's the Democratic Party, too. Both parties are really just kind of dumb, and they're not very well centralized. And they also don't seem to have a very clear agenda or message. I mean, yeah, there's the Republican Charter, or whatever it is they call it, but that doesn't really mean anything. right? Because you can defer from that and still become a Republican candidate, right? I mean, surely there are some things on the Republican the manifesto that certain candidates have not quite agreed with, and that doesn't really matter because they don't really care. I mean, think about it this way: Donald Trump is actually making waves in the Democratic or the Republican Party. That kind of shows you already what a joke the party is. I mean, the whole thing is just silly. The whole thing is dumb. Why would you ever, at any point, vote for any party? Because they don't really help any. I mean, think about it. If I vote for a Republican president in the 2016 elections, am I going to be that much better off than I was today? You know, at that point in the future. Are things really going to change that much? Is there going to be some sort of exponential or just amazing shift from one side to the other when we're going to become an uber conservative country and social trends will change and all these different things? No, nothing's going to change, at least not for the better anyway. If there's a Republican president aside from a Democratic president, it doesn't matter. That's what people are so duped into believing, is that it actually matters who's in office, in the president anyway, because it really doesn't. The president doesn't have a whole lot of power anyway. I mean, yeah, there are executive orders, but aside from that, all the president does is say stuff, go to meetings, write executive orders, sign bills, and sometimes veto bills. And there's not really a whole lot to it. You know, it's not like it's the most important office in the United States, because there isn't really any one most important office in the United States. That's kind of the point. We've turned the presidency, or the presidency, I should say, into a monarchy of sorts. And it's socially we have. It's not just any one president you can point to and say, look, he changed everything. No, it's us as a society. We have changed the office of president into some sort of bizarre monarchy of the United States. So now we have the de facto king of the United States, thanks to our social understanding of how the office works, which kind of makes sense because you take example from other countries which have a more centralized view of government. And so we take example from that and say, oh, so that's what the president is. He's sort of like a king of the United States. No, not really. The president doesn't, or at least is not supposed to have all that much power at all. People keep saying, I want a strong president. I don't. I don't want a strong president. I don't want strong leadership. Why? Because I don't want a leader. I don't want anyone telling me what to do, so I don't really want strong leadership. I believe more in self-government than I do federal government, state government, city government. I think people should be able to do what they want to do within the confines of the law, of course. But really, it seems silly to want a strong leadership. That seems kind of contradictory, really. When you say, yeah, we're the party for the people, now give us strong leadership. That sounds kind of contradictory, really. So I really don't want strong leadership at all. I would much prefer to have, well, not much of any leadership, actually. Uber is using free rides as a lobbying tool, according to The Verge. Uber's rapid rise has spawned one of America's most heated urban policy debates. In cities across the country, the company has been battling regulators seeking to rein it in, and it has enlisted a formidable army of lobbyists that has begun to rival some of the largest and most politically influential corporations. Uber has supplemented its more traditional lobbying tactics with the creative use of its customer base, I should say, customer base, which it mobilizes to pressure officials who seek regulations that the company opposes. Now, Uber is an interesting entity. Uber is interesting because it's not really been done before, at least not in recent modern history. Maybe there was something along the lines of ride sharing back in ancient Greece, but I'm not aware of that. Maybe Uber takes influence from some sort of ancient ride-sharing system that existed in the Chinese continent, or the Asian continent, in the Chinese area back before it was a centralized country. Perhaps there was some system where people would share rides as just a matter of principle. I don't know, but barring that, Uber is doing something that's totally new, and it's really kind of fascinating. Now, people will say, it's not fair that Uber doesn't pay the same taxes that these taxi companies pay. Well, let's put it this way. Put it in these terms, and you'll see my understanding. You live in a neighborhood. Every single one of your neighbors has gotten robbed, but you haven't. Somebody's broken into every single one of your neighbors' houses and robbed each and every one of them, and they're all kind of angry about that. But you've managed to avoid getting robbed because you've managed to protect yourself and put up safeguards in your home, your castle, to avoid getting robbed. Now people say that's not fair that you've not been robbed. Well, that's sort of what's going on here. The taxi companies are being robbed. They're being outright robbed. They're being shanked in the streets and having their wallets taken from them. And people are saying then that it's not fair that Uber hasn't had the same thing happen to them. It doesn't make any sense. It's really nonsensical that people expect that Uber should pay all these different taxes just because everyone else does. The real shame is that everyone pays these taxes, really. Uber's made extensive political use of its arguably largest asset, which is its own drivers. Just last month, for instance, Uber held a demonstration at New York City Hall to protest a proposal to curb the company's expansion in New York. To bolster the pro-Uber crowd, the company provided free rides to Uber customers seeking to attend the demonstration. Last week, after an aggressive PR blitz that framed the city bureaucracy as beholden to its politically entrenched taxi industry, Uber prevailed in its fight with City Hall when New York Mayor Bill de Blasio backed down in his attempt to limit the company's expansion. And last Friday, during an anti-Uber strike held by drivers of traditional cabs in Rio de Janeiro, Uber upstaged its opposition by offering free rides to customers in the city. So while the taxi companies were on strike and you couldn't get rides, with Uber you could. So they kind of have defeated their entire purpose of existing if you can just get a free ride. It's actually kind of stupid when you think about it, that the taxi companies, for some reason, think that opposition in that sort of way is going to make any sort of difference. Really, whining and complaining seems to be the only method of protest that these unions know. It also appears that if you're a politician or a leading policy leading policy wonk, that's what the article says, about to address a crowd of civic leaders, you might become the beneficiary of free Uber rides as well. In March of last year, while the company was fighting cities on multiple fronts, Uber helped to sponsor an urban policy summit in Denver that hundreds of civic leaders, policy experts, and business figures would attend. According to email correspondence obtained by The Verge, Uber's sponsorship included offering free rides to some of the event's influential speakers, which included Albuquerque's mayor, the creative city author Charles Landry, former Brookings Institution urban policy expert Jennifer Bradley, and political theorist Benjamin Barber. The emails describing the arrangement were sent by an employee of the Denver Downtown Partnership, the business association that organized the Rocky Mountain City Summit and secured the free rides for its keynote speakers to Uber's sponsorship of the event. So Uber treats its customers and those who argue for it right, it would appear, which is interesting. Now, that's not to say that taxi companies are bad inherently, because they aren't. There's nothing wrong with a taxi service. The problem is competition, or rather a lack of want for competition. If you are in a market, you don't really want competition, it seems like, at least if you're a taxi company or you own a taxi company, because then that pushes you to be better, and who wants that? Now, here in the radio business, there is competition, believe it or not. We hear other stations and we think, we got to beat that. And it's that way with every other station, too. Not so much music radio, but definitely with talk radio, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of back and forth, and not so much overtly, right? Not so much directly. But notice if you listen to programming, there's a lot of things that will be on at the same time as other stations, and it's interesting how the market works. Well, you'd think that every business would be that way. There should be competition in the marketplace. Monopolies generally aren't a very good idea, and monopolies generally exist with the help of the government anyway, so it's pretty obvious that government is a problem there as well. However, the taxi companies don't seem to want competition very much. That seems kind of weird. If I was starting up a business like a taxi company, it would be unrealistic of me to expect that there'd be no competition. That seems to be the case, though, with Yellow Cab in New York City, where it's like, we don't want really any competition with Uber. Well, what is the mayor, or who is the mayor, to decide how many cars there should be on the streets of New York City? Because that was part of it, was the Taxi and Limousine Commission, or TLC, had a cap on how many taxis could be on the streets at any one point in time. Or point in time, I keep saying point and time, but that makes no sense. Any one point in time. But who is the mayor to decide that? What's the Taxi and Limousine Commission to decide that, really, when it comes down to it? I mean, who is anyone to decide how many cars should be on the streets? The market decides, which means no one decides, which is good, because then that means competition, and competition's good. I mean, I'm glad that there are competitors in radio. It pushes us to be better here at Hot News Talk Radio. I'm glad there are competitors in any other market, in the grocery store market, because it gives me choices. I'm glad there competition in the gas station market because it means that prices will be higher here and lower there. I like competition. Any real free marketer does, because that's just a part of the market, and that's part of capitalism, and that's good. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio on your smartphone, where you can listen to us live anywhere in the world. This is Hot News Talk Radio and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft reacting to the NFL upholding quarterback Tom Brady's 4-game suspension in the Deflategate case.
I've come to the conclusion that this was never about doing what was fair and just.
Brady, in a Facebook post, repeats he did nothing wrong and vows to fight the suspension. The Justice Department says Pennsylvania Congressman Chaka Fattah has been charged with taking part in a racketeering conspiracy. Officials say charges against Fattah and others include bribery, mail fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. Congress hearing more about the Iran nuclear deal.
The deal addresses one critical and the most dangerous point of friction with the Iranian regime.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Martin Dempsey, tells the Senate Armed Services Committee he remains concerned about Iran's ballistic missile technology, proxy terror groups, and cyber attacks.
Fox Radio's Jared Halpern. Fox News. We report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
A rather obnoxious assumption is made when a lot of planning is taking place. You see, we always plan for the future with a lot of assumptions, right? If I plan for a 10-year plan for finances, then I account for tax rates, assuming that they're not going to change. If I do a 10-year plan for gasoline or driving my car, then I account for theoretical factors in gas prices. But then something like the Iran nuclear deal happens where gas prices go down quite a bit because Iran is now allowed, yet again, I don't know why we're determining what they're allowed to do, but whatever, to have a oil industry yet again. Something like that. And we make poor assumptions when planning for the future. Little assumptions that you would think would be very inconsequential, but actually are not. It's something that has to be kept in mind, because things change over time, believe it or not. Inflation is real. There are different factors on the international field that change the price of things here domestically. It doesn't really make sense sometimes, but it's true. Again, the Iran nuclear deal has changed the price of gas for the better, fortunately, and people have been talking about how gas may go down to below $1 per gallon and all sorts of different predictions. I don't know how accurate those are, but it's pretty exciting nonetheless. I would love to see gas at $2 a gallon. I mean, I'm a youngin'. I'm a youngster. When I started driving, gas was about $5 a gallon. It was around that area. It was like 4.20 something for a gallon of gas. And you can imagine how expensive that is for a 16-year-old who doesn't really have much of any job to speak of, to pay for gas for a Buick or a Nissan Pathfinder from '94. You can imagine how expensive that gets. So I was dumping all of my money into gas, and it got to be, oh gosh, it was just the worst. All of my money went into gas, and it kind of still does, but not so much, not as much anymore anyway. Gas is one of those things where you got to think positive. You got to think positively, I should say. You must think positively when you're planning ahead. Not necessarily because everything is going to be positive, but because we have to keep a positive frame of mind. Elsewise, we'll fall into depression and we'll all be very upset people, and we don't want to have that, because a good economy is actually, believe it or not, kind of dependent as well on the mood of the person involved or the populace involved. We have to keep ourselves in a good mood, and we'll have a better economy for it. Think about the 1980s. The economy actually wasn't that much better going from the 70s into the 80s. In fact, we saw inflation and we saw huge tax hikes, the likes of which had never been seen before, even though blessed St. Reagan promised we wouldn't have any. But anyway, it seems Reagan's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But anyway, it seems like the mood changed so much. The mood of the people in the 1980s was so much different from that in the 1970s, because the 70s was a dark, depressing time where you had the Sex Pistols, it was a good band, and you had movies like Taxi Driver coming out, very depressing movies, very depressing media, very depressing era. 1970s New York City, we always think of the gritty, dark 1970s. And that kind of was how it was, I suppose. Because we look back on it that way, then it kind of is true almost. Perception in some ways can be reality. And because we perceive the 1980s to be so much better, they became so much better. Kind of weird to think about. But the 2010s have become very depressing in a lot of ways, and we have to not let it get to our heads. Now, me saying that isn't going to make it so. So make it so for yourself. Make it so, number one, because hey, you're number one, man. Let's keep it positive here in the economy. But talking about gas and awful, terrible, no good, bad gas prices, wireless charging for electric cars is now inching closer to reality, according to The Verge. Wireless charging could be a big deal for electric vehicles, allowing drivers to top up their car's batteries just by parking in the right spot. But right now, the technology isn't really available. One of the leaders in the market is Qualcomm, which has fitted its Halo system of inductive charges into a Formula E course car and other test vehicles, but has yet to push the technology into a broader market. To this end, Qualcomm announced a new deal today with Swiss electric car parts maker Brusa, allowing the firm to develop, manufacture, and supply its Halo charging plates to other companies. There's no solid news on what's next for Halo, but Brusa says that it's working with several leading automakers to introduce wireless charging into their cars in the near future. Brusa has previously signed a deal with wireless power tech firm Witricity as well. which I can assume is wireless and electricity. Wireless charging will win, said Brusa's CEO Joseph Brusa in a press statement, I should say, about the agreement. It will give e-mobility a big boost, and it will set new sustainable technology apart from old gasoline-based technology. We are determined to make wireless charging a reality. It's not the first deal that Qualcomm has made in this area. Back in May, it announced a strategic collaboration with Mercedes-Benz owner Daimler AG to incorporate Halo systems into electric cars. It's another small step towards a wider deployment of the technology. Although wireless charging is not any faster than using cables, in fact, it is sometimes a little bit slower, companies hope that the convenience of park to charge will win customers over. Qualcomm imagines a future in which wireless charging plates are as ubiquitous as Wi-Fi hotspots, even suggesting highway charging lanes where electricity can top up the batteries as they drive. It's an ambitious dream, of course, but deals like this bring it just a little bit closer. We already have wireless charging for smartphones. You can affix a wireless charging device to a smartphone and you can set it down on a compatible table and your phone will charge. There was an experiment with Starbucks to have that available as well, and it was kind of interesting. Although it didn't really take off. Wireless charging for smartphones hasn't really taken off yet. It's kind of an infant technology. Well, sort of. It's an infant technology in the modern mind. But actually, wireless charging induction power has been around since the turn of the century, the turn of the last century, not the turn of this century. It's interesting to think about how many technologies we're using today that are actually really old. Think about it this way. We use Wi-Fi every day. I use Wi-Fi here at the office. We use cell phone signals to talk to each other, right? We use our cell phones to text and talk and all these sorts of things. But that's an old technology. The radio signals are actually really old. When broken down to its base components, it's just sending out a radio signal, and that's been around since the middle 1800s. We've known how to harness radio technology, electromagnetic waves, since the 1900s, the very early 1900s. We sort of became the masters of that technology. And so it's really an old technology that we're using for very high-tech futuristic purposes. It's weird to think about, but it's the case. It's true. We're using really old technology and just adapting it and making it faster, but the technology itself, the method, hasn't really changed at all in at least 150 years now when it comes to wireless communications and wireless power, because the technology, especially for induction power, has been around since at least the Tesla days, because he experimented with it and was successful with it. It's just that it is bulky, and it was bulky back then and it's becoming less bulky now. Space is one of the biggest factors in consumer adoption. If the thing is too big, people don't want it. If the thing is too small, people will lose it. If it's just the right size, now you've got it. So if we have wireless charging for smartphones that's small enough that we won't lose the charging device on our countertops or whatever, and if it can be built into our smartphones, now we're talking. Well, Conan O'Brien is a rather prominent talk show host, or at least I should say, well, it is a talk show, isn't it? It's a late night talk show. Yeah, he's a rather prominent talk show host, and he's been accused of lifting one-liners off of Twitter. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240. Hot News Talk Radio. Lifting one-liners from Twitter is what Conan O'Brien is accused of. Well, according to a copyright infringement lawsuit recently filed in federal court by a self-described Southern California comic writer named Robert Alexander Kasselberg, a few jokes he published were picked up by the comedian Conan O'Brien, who told them during his monologue on the Conan television show throughout the year. The suit comes as Twitter has been in the news for honoring Digital Millennium copyright takedown requests from users complaining that their jokes were lifted wholesale and shared by others, passing them off as their own, which leads to interesting debates about ownership. What is ownership anyway when it comes to intellectual property? There's a pretty hot debate about that. Yeah, sure, there are legal definitions, but we'll ignore those. What about the philosophical ownership of a concept? Can you own a concept? Can you own a string of words? Can you own a book that you authored? Do you really own that? Do you own a piece of work that's become almost public domain because it's so ubiquitous? Do you actually really own intellectual concepts? Well, as someone who is very much into both capitalism and into a rather anarchic system where there are no rulers, it becomes kind of difficult, because on the one hand, I am a very firm believer in ownership, but on the other hand, I'm a very firm believer in a public domain of sorts. So it's complicated. Well, let's put it this way. There's copyright law presently, which sort of more or less in a nutshell states that if you created something and it's original to you, you sort of have a understanding of ownership there. And so you can file a complaint if someone uses your content without your permission, especially if they've made some sort of monetary gain off of it and have not paid you for that. You've not received any royalties for your IP being used. We'll use IP from now on to refer to intellectual property, by the way. IP equals intellectual property. Not internet protocol in this case, just in this case. Probably in the future, IP is going to be internet protocol, but for right now, IP is intellectual property. So if you've used, say, Twitter to make a joke, and that joke is original to you, maybe it's an observation about something, you more or less own that. That's your joke that you just made, but you put it out there for the public. Now we run into problems where people will repeat that, not realizing that they've read it before, because that happens too, where you'll read something and then you'll be walking down the street and you'll think of it and you'll think that it's original to you when in actuality is not. Mistakes happen. Sure, we can address that. Mistakes do happen, and we can admit that. There's an honest mistake that occurred. Okay, fine, just take it down, whatever. Big deal. Well, it becomes sort of a problem on a bigger scale when something like this happens where let's just assume that a late night talk show host has done this. So I'm not accusing Conan O'Brien of having done this, but let's assume that there's a scenario where a talk show host who is not Conan O'Brien has done something like this. Well, in that scenario, then somebody's made a lot of money because late night talk shows presumably get quite a bit of money and pull high ratings, and they have lots of sponsors, and they have product placement, and they have high profile guests, and all sorts of different things. You can have the president on your late night talk show if you want, all these different things. Lots of money has been made off of a joke that was offered out for free on Twitter. That seems kind of not right. So that's where the debate comes in. Do you really own that joke that's been made? Some argue yes, some argue no. I argue it depends on if you want to own it or not, I suppose. If you've put it out there for public domain, then hey, there you go. But if you put it out there as a way to sort of lift yourself up on the internet saying, this is me, this is my joke, I'm funny, then it's a little bit different. People take that and steal it from you in a sense and say, this is my joke now, I've made it, and take credit for it. That's a little bit shady. I would feel a little bit annoyed about that. I probably wouldn't file a cease and desist. I would just think it's kind of funny, but I don't know. A Delta flight this week that took off from Cleveland to New York with just 2 passengers is the joke, and they fought for control over the armrests the entire flight. Tom Brady says he wants to give his MVP truck to the man who won the game for the Patriots. So enjoy that truck, Pete Carroll, and all sorts of other odd jokes from Twitter. The streets named Bruce Jenner might have to change names, and one could go from a cul-de-sac to a not sack is the joke that was on Twitter. Castleberg says that he filed copyright applications for these jokes with the U.S. Copyright Office. The copyrights are currently pending, the suit says. Plaintiff did not receive any compensation for the use of these works. Plaintiff did not receive any scene credit or screen credits for the use of these works. And plaintiff did not receive any writing credits for the use of these works, the lawsuit says. The suit seeks a restraining order prohibiting the comedian from using the plaintiff's material, along with at least $600,000 in damages plus fees and other costs under the U.S. Copyright Act. Damages for willful infringement run as high as $150,000 per violation. The jokes, however, were not repeated verbatim, and they were recasted. The show's production company, Conoco, says that there was no merit to this lawsuit. Intellectual property has become kind of a convoluted thing, where you can file a lawsuit for all sorts of different things now, which you claim are yours, when it's a little bit questionable if anyone can actually own a concept. Can anyone actually own a joke in that sense? It's questionable. It's an interesting debate, certainly one that needs to be made, and we'll continue to raise points about that here on Hot News Talk Radio and Digital Drive. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, of course. And go to hotnewstalkradio.com and you can listen to us streaming live over the internet. If you get the TuneIn app, if you're like me, you probably listen to most everything on your smartphone, podcasts, music, whatever, and radio too. Well, you can listen to radio if you have the TuneIn app, and that's the best way to do it because you can get all sorts of different radio stations, and of course, you can get us here on Hot News Talk Radio, and we'd very much appreciate it if you would tune into Hot News Talk Radio on the TuneIn app. It's a great way to listen to us, and it sounds really good. CD quality audio, very nice stuff, and I listen to it quite a bit on my smartphone, and you should too. Lexus is going to be showing off its hoverboard in action on August the 5th. Last month, Lexus unveiled the Slide, which is an honest-to-goodness working hoverboard that actually uses magnetic levitation and liquid nitrogen-cooled superconductors to stay afloat. Now the company says that it's ready to show off the board to the public, setting the date for August the 5th in a brief teaser video on YouTube. Lexus is not giving any further details right now, but it seems that it's not just cruelly pranking the internet. The Slide uses technology that's similar to working hoverboards that has been tried out on The Verge, and it seems way more substantive than hoaxes that we've seen in the past that had Doc Brown from Back to the Future in those videos. Very annoying. It means that the board's operation will likely be limited to specially designed metal floors, so we don't know much more about it, but we will find out more on August the 5th. Lexus is showing off a very interesting and very cool hoverboard August the 5th. Now, the annoying thing about the hoverboards is that there are 50 million different iterations of the hoverboard. It seems like we keep seeing different videos of this time it's a real working hoverboard that anyone can have. And then it turns out that you have to pay $500 to buy the thing or more. And then you have to pay a ton of money to keep the thing working. And then you have to use it only in a specially designed area that has brass floors and copper floors and all these different things. It just gets to be annoying. At a certain point, it gets to the point where it's not even worth all the trouble of having the thing. So I don't know. Hoverboards are an interesting idea, but they're also not really that practical either. I mean, when would I ever use one where I couldn't just use something that has wheels or just drive? So very annoying. Amazon is making its case for dedicated drone highways in the sky. Much of the talk about around the feasibility of Amazon's Prime Air drone delivery service is rightly centered around how the vehicles can be safely squeezed into U.S. airspace. But under plans outlined by the company at NASA conventions today, the aerial robotic couriers could have as much to do with larger manned aircraft as the school bus does with a freight train. By setting aside a low-altitude chunk of the sky and splitting it into high-speed and low-speed droneways, Amazon believes the needs of the fast-growing industry can be accommodated without bringing all manner of things crashing into the ground. So it's interesting to see, but it's interesting to see how drone technology is being used in ways that's, not what we would immediately think of, like delivery services. When I think of drones, I usually think of them just being used for imaging. I don't really think of them being used to drop off and pick up payloads. Maybe because I'm not imaginative, but it's an interesting concept anyway. And it's actually being, used. It's actually possibly could be rolled out this year, next year, whenever. It was supposed to be rolled out, by the way, this year in 2015, but the FAA dragged its feet, and so we didn't have any sort of drone delivery service for us here in the States, thanks to the FAA dragging its feet. Thanks, FAA, by the way. Much of the talk around the feasibility is about the airspace problem, though. That's the thing with drones, is that airspace is something that has to be accounted for. At NASA's Ames Research Center in California this week, the space agency is playing host to some of the big players in the drone delivery game. Among the keynote speakers at the 2015 Unmanned Aircraft System Traffic Management Convention is the boss of Google's Project Wing, Dave Voss, who's a representative from the Federal Aviation Administration, and Gur Kimchi, who heads up the Amazon Prime Air. Today was Kimchi's turn at the rostrum, and he used the platform to paint a picture of how he sees drones of all types, not just Amazon's, taking to the skies. The vision stems from the company's belief that the 85,000 cargo, military, and general aviation flights taking place every day in the U.S. will be massively outstripped by outstripped, by drone operations in the next decade. Because of this, it says the current approach to airspace management will quickly become outdated and ill-equipped to deal with the highly automated nature of drone flight. So then what's the answer? Well, according to Amazon, dedicating the airspace below 500 feet where general aviation starts entirely to drones. The space below 200 feet would be reserved for low-speed, localized traffic. This would include things like hobbyist videos, building inspections, and crop monitoring. And the space between 200 and 400 feet would then be where the real action starts, dubbed as high-speed transit space. This altitude would then be allocated to highly capable drones fitted with more sophisticated technologies like sense and avoid systems. Here, they would travel long distances autonomously, say from an Amazon warehouse to a customer's home with a package in tow beyond the operator's line of sight. That's another problem with FAA regulations right now, is even in a commercial setting where you have licenses and everything, the drone has to be operated within the operator's line of sight. Very annoying, very obnoxious. It's one of those things where it seems like the government doesn't actually know how the technology works, so they just make up arbitrary guidelines that they expect everyone to follow, even though they're really just arbitrary and they're not really that helpful either. I mean, what's that going to help, keeping the drone within your line of sight, really? I mean, what defines a line of sight anyway? If it passes behind something, am I suddenly in violation of FAA regulations? Can I then be fined for that? Who knows? Drone technology is something that is still kind of new. It's something that's still being developed. And really, it seems like letting the government in on it is not a very good idea, because the government tends to mess up basically everything. No matter who's in office, by the way, the government seems to mess up basically everything. So then why should we allow it to enter into commerce with drones? Under Amazon's plan, the drones would have to fit a certain criteria to gain access to this business-friendly slice of air. It proposes sorting drones into 4 classes based on the sophistication and safety of their onboard equipment: basic, good, better, and best, with only those rated best permitted to carry out complex flights in populated environments. It proposes 5 necessities for these such vehicles: GPS to track location in relation to hazards, online flight planning, stable internet connection, and ability to communicate positions with other drones to avoid collisions, and advanced sensors to avoid other obstacles like birds and balloons. The airspace between 400 and 500 feet would then be declared a permanent no-fly zone to create a buffer between drones and civil and military aviation. Amazon has hinted at such a plan previously, but this is the first time that it's revealed its vision in such detail. It intends to refine the model in collaboration with aviation authorities and others in the commercial drone industry, such as Project Wing's Dave Voss, who is also due to weigh in on the topic at this week's convention. But keep in mind, had it not been for the FAA regulations, we probably would have Amazon drone delivery already. So you could have a package shipped to your door 30 minutes or less, or an hour or less. Still, any time under a day is really impressive. If I need something and I need it in 30 minutes, I can order it on Amazon. That's crazy. But then that also opens the door for competitors here in our local area, where we can have local businesses deliver coffee to you at your office without you having to leave. All sorts of different, very interesting technologies. Hopefully the FAA steps back and the consumer can then take control, or the business sector, I should say, can take control. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, right here in Chattanooga, North Hamilton County, bringing you the news right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead. 622-3156.
Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece. Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece to the perfect, affordable handcrafted gem. From just $20 silver earrings to your dream elegant work of art to adorn your finger, neck, and wrist, impressing your friends and family, Arnie Guest Goldsmith will ensure that your budget is met. Planning the perfect wedding or a special event? Then let Arnie Guest Goldsmith assist you in choosing or designing the keepsake that will last you a lifetime. All of Arnie Guest Goldsmith repairs and crafting are done in-house, so you can be rest assured that it will meet or exceed your expectations. For over 30 years, Arnie Guest Goldsmith has served Chattanooga with the finest jewelry and services, meeting only the highest quality and standards. So the next time you think of jewelry, custom design, remounting, appraisals, or repairs, remember Arnie Guest Goldsmith. And please visit Arnie Guest Goldsmith at 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. That's 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. Call 875-2390. That's 875-2390. Or go to jewelryfromscratch.com. That's all one word, jewelryfromscratch.com. Jewelryfromscratch.com. Arnie Guest Goldsmith of Chattanooga.
Surgery does not have to be financially painful. Hi, I'm Surgical Dr. David Redd, and I'd like to invite you to my walk-in surgery clinic in North Shore. Quick Surge brings you immediate relief from moles, skin tags, maybe a laceration. Quick Surge. You walk in, fill out a mini form, I numb the area I'll treat, and before you know it, you're on your way home. Do I take insurance? No, because I take cash customers. I have super low and fixed prices. Credit card, check, or cash. Uninsured? Member of the working financially disadvantaged? Choose Quick Surge. I publish prices online. No murk, just sunshine. Hassle-free, pain-free. Love the idea of a personal relationship with a doctor? Drop in with a nasty cut from work. Quick Surge. I'll take care of you. Quick Surge in the Public Center on the North Shore. No insurance hassles with Quick Surge. The national medical system is dysfunctional, overpriced, very alienating. I'm part of the solution, and so are you. Come on home. QuickSurge.com. QUIKSURG. Relief.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life. Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can't help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shallowford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News. I'm Steve Kaith, and a member of Congress has been indicted in a big money racketeering case. We're live on Capitol Hill with CBS's Stephen Portnoy.
As the top Democrat on a House Appropriations Subcommittee, Pennsylvania Congressman Shaka Fattah helps oversee the spending of more than $50 billion. Today, federal prosecutors say the veteran congressman cooked up and covered up schemes involving the misuse of campaign funds and federal grants. FBI Special Agent in Charge, Ed Hanko.
When our representatives put its self-interest above public, they dishonor their office.
Fattah denies any wrongdoing and says he'll step aside as a subcommittee leader as the case moves forward. Steve?
Authorities in the Buffalo area are charging a man with trying to help ISIS terrorists. U.S. Attorney William Hochul says a neighbor blew the whistle on 44-year-old Arafat Nagy.
The complaint alleges that Nagy purchased numerous items of military combat gear, including night vision goggles, other items which can be used in the military or violence context.
He says Nagy traveled twice to Turkey over the past 3 years. Afghanistan's government's confirming reports that say Taliban leader Mullah Omar is dead. The government says he died a little more than 2 years ago in Pakistan. CBS News contributor Michael Morrell is a former deputy director at the CIA.
He was the leader of the Taliban, ever since 9/11 and prior to 9/11. So any Taliban attack against the United States, any Taliban killing of an American soldier is at the end of the day on Mullah Omar's hands.
As his team opens training camp, New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft is blasting the NFL for upholding quarterback Tom Brady's 4-game Deflategate suspension.
I want to apologize to the fans of the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. I was wrong to put my faith in the league.
The Players Union will file papers today in federal court challenging the punishment for Brady. They're now searching from Florida to South Carolina for the 2 teen boaters missing since late last week. Coast Guard Petty Officer Steve Lehman.
We haven't suspended our search at all in the least, and we're still out there actively searching with 4 Coast Guard cutters and a C-130 from our air station in Elizabeth City.
A new government forecast indicates health care spending will outpace the country's overall economic growth over the next 10 years. CBS's Barry Bagdano has more on the cost of dealing with autism cases.
$268 billion this year, approaching $500 billion in 2025. The cost of treating autism spectrum disorder, according to University of California, Davis researchers. Calling these findings staggering, the authors of this study in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders call for increased funding that puts this complex illness on a par with diabetes, stroke, and high blood pressure.
Wall Street, the Dow is up 97 points. NASDAQ is ahead 8. This is CBS News.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? I'm Jim O'Connor, independent life insurance agent specializing in term life insurance. There's been a price war between the major life insurance companies. If you've had your term life policy more than 2 years, you may be paying too much. For example, a male age 45, non-tobacco user issued Preferred Best, $1 million of coverage is only $56 a month guaranteed level for 10 years. Or a male age 50, non-tobacco user issued Preferred Best, $500,000 of coverage is only $91 a month guaranteed level for 20 years. The life insurance industry is going through exciting changes. Make sure you're not paying too much for your term insurance. For new or replacement term life insurance, call for a free quote. 800-799-0903. That's 800-799-0903. Don't pay too much for your term insurance. Call 800-799-0903 or visit my website at term22.com. That's term22.com. Rates based on standard underwriting and may vary by state.
It may be the age of the internet, but CBS's Jim Shenevy tells us being online isn't for everyone.
It may be hard to fathom for some people, but more than 1 in 10 Americans do not use the internet. 15%, in fact, a figure that has held steady now for 2 years. A Pew Research survey found the highest percentage of non-internet users among people over the age of 65, 39%. Rural residents were next with 24% either not having internet access or not wanting to use it. Low-income Americans were also less likely to use the internet, roughly 1 in 4 with incomes under $30,000 unconnected. Jim Shenevy, CBS News.
Mini is recalling 35,000 cars in the U.S. and Canada because they don't meet side impact crash test requirements, including Cooper and Cooper S hardtop 2-door cars from 14 and 15 model years. GM's recalling some Cadillac ATS vehicles because of sunroof issues. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Trade Bank. Call now to get access to nearly 400 local businesses. Trade Bank. Call 877-2202. 877-2202. Trade Bank. You want to increase your cash flow, your competitive edge, attract new customers, and build a loyal customer base. You need Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call right now. 877-2202. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want with our wide variety of Trade Bank partners. For almost 30 years, Trade Bank has been your voice for small business, a member of the American Bankers Association, and in good standing with you. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation, 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
This is David Toulis. Join me weekdays, 9 to 11 a.m. for the David Toulis Show. We cover local economy and free markets, and we'll explore solutions to the pending disasters out of Washington, New York, and Chicago.
Hot News Talk 1240.
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Welcome, strangers. Come on in.
60-year-old Peggy Kostelnick, a mother of two, worked 27 years for the city of Willoughby. Friends say her husband Bill was set to retire next year. Instead, yesterday he found Peggy shot to death in their home in Concord, not far from where police just hours later arrested 35-year-old Emmanuel Razzo of Paynesville.
Come on in.
Was he another economic immigrant? What does Jeb call them? Economic immigrants? Oh, they're adding value. These people just want to come here to better their lives. They're leaving gang violence. Don't you understand that? The violence on the streets in Honduras and El Salvador is so bad, they're coming here to wreak havoc and violence on the streets of the United States.
It turns out police met Razzo at least once before. 3 weeks ago, Lake County Sheriff's deputies responding to calls of a suspicious vehicle at a Paynesville golf course. Razzo comes out from a wooded area and admits to being in the U.S. illegally, the report says. A call to U.S. Border Patrol and to go.
Because what harm is he really doing? I mean, you're gonna do like the broken taillight deportation because he had a broken taillight or he went 7 miles an hour over the speed limit. You're going to send him back to the streets of Honduras or El Salvador or Mexico or wherever he came from? You heartless people. You know, he probably has a family here. You want to separate those children from this upstanding individual who's a citizen and everything except a piece of paper. Because of a traffic stop?
A frustrated Paynesville judge setting bond at $10 million.
I can't set a bond high enough. I cannot set one high enough. How the hell do I know it's even him? It's had somebody that we don't even know who he is, why he's in this country, why he's here illegally, and why he allegedly committed a murder. And you can't answer any questions to identify yourself.
Okay, let me tell you this. Judge Michael Cicconetti is my new hero. That's the judge in the municipal court in Paynesville, Ohio, who one of the greatest sound bites I've heard in a long time. We don't even know who the hell this guy is. We can't even rely on who he is. He's saying who he is. Put it at $10 million, the bond. I'd put it no bond. I don't think there should be any bond for these people. Bond? To release him? Oh, we just let him out. I thought, just a traffic. He's an economic immigrant, probably going to a job that Americans won't do. A job. Is that a four-letter word? Remember Joe Biden once said that this is not a four-letter J-O-B. Whoops. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. Yes, the murder suspect found to be in the country illegally during this July 7th traffic stop. I'm noticing something which is good here. We have to talk about what impact we are having that is, I think, beneficial. Whereas 4 weeks ago, it was oftentimes difficult for us to discern the immigration status of many suspects in these local criminal matters. Drew and I and Mike have all concluded that we are seeing more identifications of illegal immigrants as such in these proceedings. Because we have spent, I don't know how many hours of man hours on our show, after the show, trying to track down the immigration status of individuals. How many times have we done that, Drew? We call these LAPD. We call Sacramento, Oakland, Chicago, Miami. We're calling these police departments and these police detectives. We're trying to get the information on so-and-so suspect arrested for the third time in 3 months, this time for an aggravated assault or an attempted rape of a young woman on the way to the store. And we're trying to find out. It's like pulling teeth. But I'm seeing that we're getting a little better at identifying this. And I think the press and a lot of these judges and law enforcement officials feel like they could be exposed. They see what happened with this Katie Steinle thing, and I think they think, uh-oh, my head's going to be on the chopping block if I don't put out this information. Don't you think that's going on? I think the Katie Steinle horrific murder has maybe slapped some of these people in the face, so they're endeavoring to get this information out. Believe me, I'd still say 80% of the time we're not getting the information, but I'll take any progress.
I can't set a bond high enough. I cannot set one high enough. How the hell do I know it's even him?
Khalid Walls, a spokesman for ICE, said the agency, quote, intends to take custody of Razzo and pursue his removal from the United States. Ooh, wow. Excuse me if I forego the standing ovation to ICE for finally doing its job. Razzo's illegal status may hit a nerve, as I'm saying, at a time when immigration is a hot-button political issue. This is how stupid these reporters are. Okay, this is a reporter named, I don't know, this is not identified, on the Cleveland.com website. Immigration has always been a hot-button issue, but these people refuse to cover it. This has been a hot-button issue since I helped lead the charge with a bunch of other great patriotic Americans to stop the stupid George W. Bush amnesty push with John McCain. This is a hot-button issue. Hello, it has been for many, many years. Just like the ripping of babies from wombs is a hot-button issue, which the media just, they don't want to touch that. I don't touch that. This is uncomfortable, makes us uncomfortable. Don't want to touch that. Well, now they have to, a little bit. Even they're still avoiding covering Planned Parenthood, even though, this most recent video just came out yesterday, another video showing these people. Did you see that video, Mike? You see what they did with that? Took that little baby's hand in the video? That was hard to watch. That was sick, the Planned Parenthood video. They're speaking casually as a baby's, I don't know how many the months in the womb the baby was, but you could clearly see the hands. Imagine how many women do you think would abort their children if they saw those hands?